One question. That's all it took. Not a stack of classified files, not a massive database of counterintelligence records. Just one question, asked by a Dallas defense attorney turned Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Months earlier, she had already confronted Kash Patel face-to-face during a House Judiciary hearing. With microphones live and cameras pointed directly at them, she told him plainly that he was the least qualified FBI director in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That moment made headlines, but that was 6 months ago. Today, she returned, and this time she didn't bring an opinion. She brought something far more serious, a subpoena. The vote had passed the day before, 24-19, compelling Patel to turn over his personal phone records, and Crockett arrived with a single question about a specific phone call on a specific date, a question even Patel's own attorneys didn't know was coming. When she asked it, the reaction inside the room was immediate. Patel's chair scraped backward from the table. A United States Capitol police officer standing near the chamber door stepped forward. Another officer at the back wall moved a hand toward her radio. For 11 seconds, the entire hearing room froze. Everyone waited to see whether the FBI director was about to do something no director had ever done during a congressional hearing. He didn't. But what happened next was just as telling. The cameras caught the moment a man realized in real time that his private phone records might no longer be private. The tension on his face said more than any words could. Stay with this story until the end, because what unfolded in the next 9 minutes may change how many people view who was actually in control of this investigation. And if you're new here, consider subscribing and turning on notifications. The phone subpoena passed yesterday carries a 14-day compliance deadline, and Crockett just revealed exactly which call she wants to see. Before we go further, it's important to understand who Jasmine Crockett is. 6 months ago, most viewers saw the unfiltered version of her, the moment she sharply dismissed Patel on national television while Jim Jordan sat just 2 seats away. That moment was blunt and unforgettable. But the Crockett who appeared at today's hearing was different, more controlled, more precise, and arguably more dangerous in a legal sense. Before entering Congress, she worked as a criminal defense attorney in Dallas, Texas. Her career was built inside courtrooms, standing before judges and juries while cross-examining law enforcement officials. She understands exactly how witnesses behave under pressure, and she knows the precise sequence of questions that can force someone into a corner, where a direct answer could be damaging and an evasive answer confirms what the questioner already suspects. For 7 months, she had been building toward this moment. Yesterday's 24-19 vote finally gave her the tools she needed, a subpoena for those phone records. Officially, the hearing was scheduled as a routine continuation of the United States Judiciary Committee oversight session with the FBI director, part of the committee's normal budget and accountability process. But the word routine didn't come close to describing what happened next, because when Crockett began speaking, it became clear she wasn't there to ask about the budget at all. When Jasmine Crockett arrived, 2 items sat clearly on the table in front of her. One was a single printed document placed face down. The other was a copy of the subpoena authorization the United States House Judiciary Committee had approved the previous afternoon. At first, no one in the room knew what the face-down document was. That changed 34 minutes into the hearing. When Crockett finally turned it over, the reaction from Kash Patel's legal team was the first signal that something unusual was about to unfold. Up until that moment, the hearing had followed a familiar script. During the first hour, Republican members of the committee largely steered the discussion in Patel's favor. They praised his operational record, asked about counterterrorism efforts, and referenced arrest statistics, questions that allowed him to deliver prepared talking points his communications team had already cleared. Patel appeared relaxed. After months of intense questioning from Democrats since the September hearings, he had grown accustomed to the pressure. He had already invoked the Fifth Amendment on live television during questioning from Jamie Raskin and managed the political fallout. Just days earlier, he had declined to publicly explain sensitive intelligence matters during an exchange with Grace Meng. By every visible measure, he seemed like someone who believed he could handle anything a congressional committee might throw at him. His right hand rested loosely on the table. His breathing appeared steady. Observers who had watched his previous hearings noticed he checked his watch only once, a small sign that he felt comfortable. Then, the committee chair, Jim Jordan, recognized Crockett for 5 minutes. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Not loudly, but subtly, the kind of shift that happens when attention moves from general listening to focused anticipation. Patel's posture didn't visibly change, but his right hand moved from the table down to his knee. The lead attorney seated behind him leaned forward slightly. "Director Patel," Crockett began. Her voice was calm and measured, the controlled tone of someone used to courtroom questioning, where raising your voice often signals weakness rather than strength. "I want to ask you about the subpoena phone record this committee authorized yesterday." Patel's expression stayed neutral. "I'm aware of the committee's action. My legal team is currently reviewing our options for response." Crockett gave a small smile, the kind of expression someone gives when a witness says exactly what they expected. "I'm sure they are," she said. Then she reached forward and slowly turned the face-down document over on the table. She didn't hold it up for the cameras. She didn't describe any classification markings, agency seals, or official headers. She simply left the document lying face up in front of her, visible to the cameras, and looked directly at Patel. "Let me ask you a specific question about a specific call," Crockett said. "And I want to be clear, I'm not asking you to speculate or estimate." She paused briefly. "I'm asking about a documented communication that appears in records this committee has already obtained through a separate process." Then she stopped speaking. For a moment, the entire room waited for what would come next. On February 23rd of this year, at 10:47 p.m., a call was placed from your personal cell phone, Jasmine Crockett said calmly. "Are you familiar with that call?" At that moment, something important became clear. Crockett wasn't describing a document obtained through the subpoena. The subpoena hadn't even been complied with yet. Instead, she was referencing a call that appeared in records acquired through a separate process, meaning the committee already had the call log. The subpoena was aimed at something else, the content behind that communication. Across the table, Kash Patel didn't turn pale. His reaction was more subtle and more telling. His face went completely still. Observers who had watched months of hearings had become familiar with his usual tells. The shift of his jaw, quick glances toward his attorneys, the slight rise and fall of his shoulders when his breathing changed under pressure. But in that moment, all of those signals stopped. He looked like someone processing new information, deciding in real time how to respond. "Senator," he said carefully, "I make a significant number of phone calls in the course of my duties as director. I cannot confirm or discuss the details of specific communications in an open setting." Crockett nodded. "I understand," she replied. "Let me try a different approach." She glanced briefly at the document lying face up on the table. "Director, are you familiar with the law firm Kasowitz Benson Torres?" Patel's chair moved. Not dramatically, he didn't jump or stand, but the chair slid back roughly 3 inches from the table, just enough to produce the quiet scrape of metal across marble. It was the kind of sound most people might miss, but every camera in the room captured it. "Senator," Patel responded, "I communicate with many attorneys as part of interagency coordination." That was the moment the tension in the room shifted. A United States Capitol police officer standing near the chamber door took several cautious steps forward, not because Patel had acted aggressively, but because the sudden movement, the unconscious retreat from the table, caught the attention of security personnel trained to react to unexpected behavior. Another officer at the back wall moved her hand toward her radio. Both officers stopped once Patel's chair stopped moving. The room exhaled. Crockett, who hadn't moved at all, continued speaking. "Director, Caselitz Benson Torres represents Donald Trump," she said. "You placed a call to that firm on February 23rd at 10:47 p.m. That call lasted 17 minutes. She allowed the statement to hang in the air for 4 full seconds. 3 weeks later, 47 Jeffrey Epstein-related documents that had been scheduled for public release were reclassified as restricted. Then she slowly picked up the subpoena authorization from the table. "The phone subpoena this committee approved yesterday," Jasmine Crockett continued, "requires the production of your complete call logs and encrypted message records from January 20th through March 15th of this year." She paused briefly before continuing. "So here is my question, Director, and I want you to think carefully before you answer, because your attorneys are watching, and I'm sure they understand exactly what this question means." She looked directly across the table at Kash Patel. "What did you discuss with Donald Trump's lawyers on February 23rd at 10:47 p.m.? The room fell silent. 11 seconds passed. In a congressional hearing, 11 seconds isn't simply a pause, it's an eternity. Patel's lead attorney was already on his feet before the 7th second had passed. "Mr. Chairman, I need to object to this line of questioning on the grounds of attorney-client privilege and executive—" He didn't finish the sentence. Committee Chairman Jim Jordan cut him off. "Counselor, your client is not acting as an attorney here. He's the witness," Jordan said firmly. "Please sit down." Jordan didn't even look at the attorney while saying it. He was looking directly at Patel. In fact, everyone in the room was looking at Patel, and Patel was looking straight at Crockett. The expression on his face wasn't anger. It wasn't panic either. Cameras captured something more controlled, the tense restraint of someone who realizes they've been strategically cornered and is deliberately choosing not to react in a way that could turn into a viral confrontation. He was calculating his response carefully. Finally, he spoke. "Senator, any communications I may have had with legal counsel are protected by attorney-client privilege," he said evenly. "I'm not in a position to discuss the substance of those communications in an open hearing." Crockett leaned forward slightly, barely an inch. "Director," she replied calmly, "you are not a client of Caselitz Benson Torres. Donald Trump is. So the privilege you're invoking belongs to someone else. He doesn't run the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He doesn't sit in that chair. You do." She paused again before continuing. "And under the terms of the subpoena this committee authorized yesterday, your call records will be produced within 14 days. She looked at him steadily. "So I'll give you one more opportunity before those records arrive. What did you discuss?" Patel didn't answer. He looked directly at Jasmine Crockett. He said nothing. And in that silence, deliberate, controlled, and fully aware, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, Kash Patel, gave the only answer he seemed willing to offer. Crockett turned toward the cameras with the expression of someone who had just received exactly the response she expected. She wasn't speaking to Patel anymore. She wasn't speaking to the committee chair, Jim Jordan. She was speaking to the entire room. "He won't answer," she said calmly. The man who told this committee 6 months ago that the FBI would not be politicized, who promised no one would be fired for political reasons, who assured full transparency regarding the Jeffrey Epstein files, is sitting here today refusing to explain what he discussed with the sitting president's personal legal team 2 weeks before 47 documents scheduled for public release were suddenly restricted. She gathered her papers. For the first time since asking the question, she stopped looking at Patel. "I have no further questions," she said, "but I will be here in 14 days when those phone records arrive." The hearing moved on. Jordan recognized the next member and the session continued. Over the next 20 minutes, Patel gradually regained his composure. His voice returned to its steady, bureaucratic rhythm as the discussion shifted to other topics. But by then, the moment had already spread far beyond the hearing room. Clips of the exchange were circulating everywhere. The sound of the chair scraping back, the United States Capitol Police officer stepping forward, the 11 seconds of silence, and Crockett's direct address to the cameras. By the time the gavel finally ended the session, legal analysts across several networks were already pointing out a major issue with Patel's response. He had attempted to invoke attorney-client privilege over a conversation with the law firm Kasowitz Benson Torres, but that firm represents Donald Trump, not Patel. In legal terms, the privilege belongs to the client, Trump, not to the FBI director, and a privilege that belongs to someone else cannot be used to block a congressional subpoena for the director's call records. Those records are expected to be produced. The committee already appears to have obtained the basic call log through another process. The subpoena now seeks additional details, including call duration, related encrypted communications, and surrounding message records. And Jasmine Crockett, the former Dallas defense attorney who built her career cross-examining law enforcement witnesses in court, is expected to be present when those documents arrive. The 14-day compliance clock has already started. Because in the end, this moment didn't come from a classified file or a hidden recording. It came from something much simpler. One question, one phone call, one night in February. And inside a congressional hearing room, the FBI director's chair slid back from the table, attorneys jumped to their feet, security stepped forward, and 11 seconds of silence told everyone watching exactly how serious that question had become.